Hello, welcome back. So on to chapter 9, The House of the Three Bears. Because if you remember, Moonface had suggested that they go and visit Goldilocks and the three bears to go and get Joe back. Bessie took a cushion, put it at the top of the slide and pushed off. Down she went, whiz! She shot to the bottom, flew out of the trapdoor and landed on the cushion of moss. She had hardly got up before Fanny flew out of the trapdoor too. "You know, that slippery slip is the greatest fun," said Bessie. "I'd love to do that all day long." "Yes, if only we didn't have to climb all the way up the tree first," said Fanny. The trapdoor flew open and out shot Moonface on a yellow cushion. He put the three cushions together, whistled to the red squirrel who looked after them, and threw them to him. Then he turned to the waiting girls. "There's a train at midnight," he said. "We shall have to hurry." The wood was still bright with moonlight. The three of them hurried between the trees. Suddenly, Bessie heard the chuffing of a train, and she and Fanny stopped in surprise. They saw a small train winding in and out of the trees, looking for all the world like a clockwork train made big. The engine even had a key still in its side. There was a small station near. Moonface caught hold of the girl's hands and ran to it. The train was standing quite still there. The carriages had tin doors and windows which didn't open, just like those of a clockwork train. Bessie tried her hardest to open a door, but it was no use. The train whistled. It was anxious to be off. "Don't you know how to get into this train?" asked Moonface with a laugh. "You are sillies. You just slide the roof off." As he spoke, he pushed at the roof and it slid off like the roof of a clockwork train's carriage. "I believe this is just a clockwork train made big," said Fanny, climbing over the side of the carriage and getting in at the roof. "I never saw such a funny train in my life." They all got in. Moonface couldn't seem to slide the roof on again properly, so he stood up inside the carriage, and when the train went off, Bessie and Fanny, who couldn't possibly see out of the tin windows, stood up and looked out of the roof instead. They did look funny. At the next station, which was called Gollywog Station, three gollywogs got into their carriage and stared at them very hard. One was so like Bessie's own golly at home that she couldn't help staring back. The second station was called Crosspatch Station, and standing on the platform were three of the crossest looking old women that the girls had ever seen. One of them got into their carriage, and the three gollywogs at once got out and climbed into the next one. "Move up," said the Crosspatch angrily to Moonface. He moved up. The Crosspatch was an uncomfortable person to travel with. She grumbled all the time, and her basket, which was full of prickly rose sprays, kept bumping into poor Fanny. Here we are," sang out Moonface when they got to the next station, and the three of them got out gladly, leaving the Crosspatch grumbling away all to herself. The station was called Bear's Station, and there were a great many teddy bears about, some brown, some pink, some blue, and some white. When they wanted to talk to one another, they kept pressing themselves in the middle, where their growl was, and then they could talk quite well. Fanny wanted to giggle when she saw them doing this. It did look so funny. "Please, could you tell me the way to the Three Bears' house?" Moonface asked a blue teddy bear politely. The bear pressed himself in the middle and answered in a nice growly voice, "Up the lane and down the lane and around the lane." "Thank you," said Moonface. "It sounds a bit funny to me," said Bessie doubtfully. "Not at all," said Moonface, leading them up a little honeysuckle lane. "Here we are, going up a lane. And now you see it goes downhill, so we're going down. And presently we'll turn a corner and go around the lane." He was right. They went up and then down and then around. And there, in front of them, tucked into a woody corner, was the dearest, prettiest little house the girls had ever seen. It was covered with pink roses from top to bottom, and its tiny windows winked in the moonlight as if they had eyes. Moonface knocked at the door. A sleepy voice cried, "Come in." Moonface opened the door and they all went in. There was a table in front of them, and on it were 3 steaming bowls of porridge, and round it were 3 chairs, 1 big, 1 middle size, and 1 tiny. "It's the house of the 3 bears, all right," whispered Bessie excitedly. It was just like seeing a fairy story come true. "We're here," said the voice from another room. Moonface went in with Bessie and Fanny. The other room was a small bedroom with a big bed in it, a middle-sized bed, and a tiny cot. In the big bed lay a large brown bear. In the middle-sized one was a fat mother bear, and in the cot was a most adorable baby bear with the bluest eyes the girls had ever seen. "Where's Goldilocks?" asked Moonface. "Gone shopping," said the father bear. "Where does she sleep when she's here?" asked Bessie, looking round. "And does she always live with you now?" "Always," said the father bear, putting his big nightcap straight. "She looks after us very well. There's a market on tonight in the Enchanted Wood, and she's gone to see if she can buy some porridge cheap. As for where she sleeps, well, she just chooses any of our beds, you know, and we cuddle up together then. But she likes the baby bear's bed best because it's so soft and warm." "She did in the story," said Fanny. "What story?" asked the mother bear. "Well, the story of the 3 bears," said Fanny. "Never heard of it," said the 3 bears all together, which really did seem rather extraordinary to Bessie and Fanny. They didn't like to ask any more questions after that. "Here's Goldilocks now," said the mother bear. The sound of a little high voice could be heard coming nearer and nearer. The baby bear sprang out of his cot and ran to the door in delight. A pretty little girl with long curling golden hair picked him up and hugged him. "Hello, darling," she said. "Have you been a good bear?" Then she saw Bessie, Fanny and Moonface and stared at them in surprise. "Who are you?" she said. Moonface explained about Joe and how he had gone to the land of ice and snow where the big white bears lived. "I'm afraid the magic snowman will make him a prisoner there," said Moonface, "and he'll have to live with the white bears. Could you get your 3 bears to come with us and ask the white bears to let Joe go free, Goldilocks?" "But I don't know the way," said Goldilocks. "We do," said the father bear suddenly. "The white bears are cousins of ours. Moonface, if you can help us with a bit of magic, we can visit the land of ice and snow in a few minutes." "Good gracious," said Bessie, most astonished. "But it's ever so far away, right at the top of the faraway tree." "That doesn't matter," said the father bear. He took down a large jar from the mantelpiece and filled it with water. He put into it a yellow powder and stirred it with a magpie's black and white feather. Moonface put his hands into the water and began to sing a string of such strange words that Bessie and Fanny felt quite trembly. The water bubbled. It rose to the top of the jar. It overflowed and ran onto the floor. It turned to ice beneath their feet. A cold wind filled the little house and everyone shivered. Then Bessie looked out of the window, and what she saw there filled her with such amazement that she couldn't say a word, but just pointed. Fanny looked too, and whatever do you think? Outside lay nothing but ice and snow. They were in the same land as Joe, though how this had happened neither Bessie nor Fanny could make out. "We're there," said Moonface, taking his hands out of the jar and drying them on his red handkerchief. "Can you lend us any coats, bears? We should be cold here." The mother bear handed them thick coats out of a cupboard. They put them on. The bears already had thick fur and did not need anything extra. "Now to go and find Joe," said Moonface. "Come on, bears, you've got to help." Chapter 10. The Battle of the Bears. Goldilocks, the 3 bears, the girls, and Moonface all went out of the little cottage. How strange it seemed to see roses blossoming over the walls when ice and snow lay all around. The thing is, "Where do we go to find the polar bears?" said Goldilocks. "Over there, towards the sun," said the father bear. Bessie and Fanny were surprised to see both the moon and the sun shining in the sky. They followed the father bear, slipping and sliding and holding on to one another. It was very cold, and their noses and toes felt as if they were freezing. Suddenly they saw the little snow house that Joe had built for the magic snowman. "Look," said the father bear, "we'd better make for that." But before they got there, a big white figure squeezed itself out of the snow house and saw them. It was the magic snowman. As soon as he saw the three bears and the others, he began to shout loudly in a windy, snowy voice, "Enemies! Enemies! Hi, bears! Come and send off the enemies!" "We're not enemies," yelled Moonface, and Goldilocks ran forward to show the snowman that she was a little girl. But Moonface pulled her back. He didn't trust the old snowman. The snowman bent his big fat body down and picked up great handfuls of snow. He threw one at Goldilocks. She ducked down, and it passed over her and hit the baby bear. "Ouch," he said, and sat down in a hurry. Then everything happened at once. A crowd of white polar bears hurried out of their underground home to the help of the snowman, and soon the air was full of flying snowballs. The snow was hard, and the balls hurt when they hit anyone. It wasn't a bit of good the girls shouting that they were friends, not enemies. Nobody heard them, and soon there was a fierce battle going on. "Oh dear," gasped Bessie, trying her best to throw straight. "This is dreadful. We shall never rescue Joe by behaving like this." But there didn't really seem anything else to be done. After all, if people are fighting you, you can't do much but defend yourself. And the three bears and the girls and Moonface felt very angry at having hard snowballs thrown at them. Smack! Thud! Biff! Squish! The snowballs burst as they hit, and soon there was a great noise of angry oomphs from the white bears and ouches from the teddy bears, and yells from the children, and screeches from Moonface, who acted as if he were mad, hopping about and yelling and kicking up the snow as well as throwing it. And he was hit more than anybody else. Poor Moonface. Now, whilst this fierce battle was going on, where do you suppose Joe was? As soon as he had heard the cry of "Enemies! Enemies!" he had hidden in a corner, for he didn't want to be mixed up in any fight. When he saw the white bears going out and he was left all alone, he began at once to think of escaping. He crept to the hole that led above ground. The battle was some way off, so Joe did not see that the enemies were really his own friends. If he had, he would have gone to join them at once. "What a terrible noise they are all making," he thought. "It sounds like a battle between gorillas and bears to me. I'm not going near them. I'd be eaten up or something. I shall just run hard the opposite way and hope I'll meet someone to help me." So Joe, dressed in his bearskin and looking just like a little white bear himself, crept off over the ice and snow, not seen by anyone. He ran as soon as he thought he was out of sight. He ran, and he ran, and he ran. But he met nobody. Not a soul was to be seen. Only a lonely seal lay on a shelf of ice, but even he dived below as soon as he saw Joe. And then Joe stopped in the greatest astonishment and stared as if his eyes would fall out of his head. He'd come to the cottage of the three bears, standing all alone in the middle of the ice and snow, and of course its roses were still blooming round it, scenting all the air. "I'm dreaming," said Joe. "I simply must be dreaming. A cottage with roses, here, in the middle of the snow. Well, I shall go and see who lives there. Perhaps they would give me something to eat and let me rest, for I'm very hungry and tired." He knocked at the door. There was no answer. He opened the door and went in. How he stared! There was no one to be seen at all, but on the table stood 3 bowls of steaming porridge, 1 big, 1 middle-sized, and 1 small. It was rather dark, so Joe lighted a big candle on the table. Then he sank down into the biggest chair, but it was far too big, and he got up again. He sat down in the next sized chair, but that was too piled up with cushions, and he got up to sit in the smallest chair. That was just right, and Joe settled down comfortably, but alas, his weight was too much for it, and the chair broke to bits beneath him. He looked at the delicious porridge. He tasted the porridge in the biggest bowl. It was much too hot and burnt his tongue. He tasted the next bowl, but that was far too sweet. But when he tasted the porridge in the little bowl, it was just right. So Joe ate it all up. Then he felt so sleepy that he thought he really must rest. So he went into the bedroom and lay down on the biggest bed, but it was far too big. So he tried the middle-sized one. That was too soft and went down in the middle. So Joe lay down on the cot, and that was so small and warm and comfortable that he fell fast asleep. All this time the battle was going on. The snowman was so big, and the polar bears were so fierce, that very soon the teddy bears, the children, and Moonface were driven backwards. Then a snowstorm blew up, and the snow fell so thickly that it was quite impossible to see anything. Moonface called out in alarm, "Bears, Goldilocks, Bessie, Fanny, take hold of each other's hands at once and don't let go. One of us might easily be lost in this storm." Everyone at once took hands. The snow blew into their faces and they could see nothing. Bending forwards, they began to walk carefully away from the white bears, who had stopped fighting now and were trying to find out where their enemies were. "Don't shout or anything," said Moonface. "We don't want the white bears to hear us in case they take us prisoners. They might not listen to the teddy bears. Move off and we'll look for some sort of shelter till this storm is over." They were all very miserable. They were cold, rather frightened, and quite lost. They stumbled over the snow, keeping hold of one another's hands firmly. They went on, and suddenly Goldilocks shook off Moonface's hand and pointed in front of them. "A light!" she said in astonishment. Everyone stopped. I say, it's our cottage!" shrieked the baby bear in surprise and delight. "But who's inside? Someone must have lighted the candle." They all stared at the lighted window. Who was inside the cottage? Could the magic snowman have found it? Or the polar bears? Was it an enemy inside? Or a friend? Whoo! Blew the wind, and the snowflakes fell thickly on everyone as they stood there wondering. "Ooh," shivered Moonface. "We shall get dreadful cold standing out here in the snow. Let's go in and find out who's there." So the father bear opened the door, and one by one they all trooped in, looking round the empty room, half afraid. And that's the end of the chapter. Hope you enjoyed that one. A bit of a reminisce about the story of the 3 bears. All right, I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.